As the winter meetings unofficially launch the MLB offseason and transactions start to occur, the Philadelphia Phillies continue to be attached to a number of rumors as they seek to upgrade their team to true World Series contenders. With Anthony Santander being a familiar name on the market, the Philadelphia Phillies find their names attached to the Orioles standout. We're going to break down what the legitimacy of these reports are in connection to this Phillies team and how much that would move the meter from a World Series perspective. So, to dive right into things, Luke, I want to throw it to you right off the bat. What are your initial impressions of Anthony Santander as a player, and do you see a fit for him in red pinstripes?
Yeah, I think the bat is definitely there. 44 homers, 102 RBIs last year. The issue kind of is the strikeouts, I would
Yep.
say. That's kind of a player that I think is fits in the mold of a type that I think a lot of Phillies fans want to kind of not add more of, a guy that, hits power, driving runs, but also strikes out a lot. So that is kind of the issue there. But if the Phillies are looking for a guy that wants to drive in runs and can drive in runs, he's definitely probably a top 3 to 5 option on the market, I would say right now. Him, Soto, and some other guys. But yeah, no, he's definitely a move. I think that is an interesting one. I think there is sort of a fit there. He does play a lot of his games in right field.
Yeah.
I believe he was out there for 130 games last year. So if the Phillies did feel confident enough in moving him to left, or if they moved off of the Castellanos contract, I think both of those things are possibly on the table, obviously, if he would sign here. But I think definitely the bat could be a fit, because this team does need, once again, need hitters that can drive in runs.
Yeah.
They have guys that can get on base, and they have guys that can hit homers, but they need guys that can drive in runs really bad in this lineup.
Yeah, 100% there. And to kind of make the sales pitch a little bit, so we do officially have this article from Jackson Roberts of Sportscasting here saying that the Phillies predicted to nab $105 million All-Star Slugger in free agency. Now, to talk about what specifically was written, it says Nick Castellanos was solid down the stretch, but Brandon Marsh, Johan Rojas, and Austin Hayes all struggled to carry their weight. The Phillies ended up releasing Hayes, and if there's one position that Philadelphia will look to spend this offseason, it's somewhere in the outfield. There are only a few big-name outfielders available in free agency, but one seems like an ideal fit for the Phillies' power-hitting identity. All-star Anthony Santander, who just hit 44 home runs for the Baltimore Orioles, expects to land a career-defining contract this winter. Andrew Tredenick of NorthJersey.com recently predicted that Santander would sign with the Phillies to help reshape the outfield group. And to continue on, quote, Santander fills in one of the Phillies' glaring offensive holes and adds another featured bat to a loaded lineup, Tredenick said. Santander, 30, is a limited defender in the outfield, but he does have a cannon for an arm. In addition to those 44 home runs, he drove in 102 runs this season and put up a 814 OPS. He is also a switch hitter, which should help the Phillies with any lasting platoon issues. Recently, Tim Britton of The Athletic projected a 5-year, $105 million deal for Santander. While that's no small financial commitment, the Phillies should have the urgency to make it happen, especially after shelling out 3 even larger contracts over the past 2 offseasons. So a lot to digest here, Luke. I think some good, some bad. The defensive liability thing is obviously not something that I think is ideal. It does feel like this is a guy that sort of fits the identity of how this team is structured, that this Phillies team is built to win with offense. It has been that case through the entirety of the core of Bryce Harper. I personally think that they could lean more into it, shifting away from this. Now, to present the positives as well, he is a switch hitter. The bat speaks for itself. I do think the right field thing is an interesting conversation to have, but what's your thoughts on that entire breakdown and kind of those points there?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is like where the fit would be, because I don't love the idea of moving a guy that already kind of struggles in the outfield over to a new position.
Yeah.
If you would move him over to left field, I can't imagine it would get much better. I think there's definitely a way better chance that it would get worse rather than it would get better. I think this is sort of a thing that if the Phillies were to trade Nick Castellanos, I think this would be a lot more likely.
Okay.
I still don't think they really want to do that. I think he's going to be available, and I think they're going to kind of check around, but I still don't really see that happening. I still feel like there's a lot more guys that I think should go before him. Maybe not in the outfield, but I think there's definitely specifically like Bohm. I
Right.
think Bohm is a way more likely guy to sort of get moved. But I think with Santander, I think you have to realize sort of like what you're getting. I mean, if you can go get a switch hitting guy that hits 40 home runs out of your outfield, I think you're gonna want to take that. I think he's a really good baseball player. I mean, his stats speak for itself. 58 walks too. That's a pretty good number for
Yeah.
a guy like that. So if you can sort of get a guy like that for a not so crazy price, I don't think that price for a player that put up those stats is that crazy. So if the Phillies could get it at that number, as long as they had a spot for him, I do think it would be a very, very nice move.
Interesting. Yeah. And I do want to add a little bit more here. This coming from a completely separate article that writes on the same topic saying, quote, they've been knocking on the door for a few years only to be left empty-handed in October. Yet there is a more obvious need in the outfield where general manager Dave Dombrowski has suggested that Nick Castellanos and Brandon Marsh are locked into starting roles. The Phillies were offensively anemic in center field this season, 353 slugging percentage with an 80 WBC there, although they could choose to put Marsh back in center field for the majority of the time and take a shot on corner outfield slugger, such as switch hitter Anthony Santander. With center field being a real issue for Philadelphia, they will have to get a tag created if they're going to improve their outfield barring a trade. Even though Marsh didn't hit the ball well in the postseason, he could slide back into center field, which would allow them to pursue a corner outfield to improve the offense. While this type of move could impact the defense a tad, the need for offense from the outfield should be a priority if that's the right player. A player like Santander, who Murphy mentioned would certainly provide them with the power bat in the middle of that order, but he could be a bit of a defensive liability. Now, where all this conversation sort of circles around to me is the guy Johan Rojas here. So obviously not some overly inspiring offensive numbers from him. We know the story with Johan Rojas. He has been working his tail off down in the Dominican Republic to start off this offseason, playing baseball down there, hitting home runs, which I love to see down there. So
Yep.
shout out to Johan. I'm still fairly bullish on him being a piece of this team. I agree with you can't have that your only option at center field. There's no doubt about it. But there's going to be spots where you need his defensive ability. What's your level of confidence that this dude is ready to be, I don't want to say an everyday center fielder, but be a guy that can be counted on more than has been the case the past 2 seasons?
Yeah, I still think going in the next season, if you get a left fielder and you have a center field group of Marsh and Rojas, I think that is very much good enough.
Yeah.
You have a lot of good players on this team. Like if you go and look around the league, like there's not many good center fielders. Like there's just not. It's a dying position at the plate. There that you get little to no offensive production from the position at all. I mean, there's probably, this is a complete guess, there's probably five center fielders with an OPS over like 750. You just don't get offensive production anymore from that position. If you can have a tandem of sort of Marsh Rojas and you get a left fielder, that's good. If you have Marsh playing almost every day in left and you go get a center fielder, that's fine. I don't think there's many great center fielders to go get at this point. That's why I think the move should really be trying to upgrade left field.
Okay.
And if that is Santander, if they do think that he can play left field, then I think that works. But I really think going in the next year, I think Marsh and Rojas together in center is a lot better than people think. I think everybody that roots for this team wants everybody to have a 950 OPS and hit 30 homers and drive in 100 runs. It's just not baseball. It's just not how it works. If you look down some of the Dodgers players on that World Series roster, it's like four of them at the back end of the lineup that really aren't that good. But because you just like it just happens. Like you don't put together a lineup of nine really good hitters. It doesn't happen. If that was the case, that team would win the World Series every single year.
Yeah.
So I think if you can go in the next season with a left fielder, a new left fielder, and then Marsh, Rojas, and center, I really think that's probably the ideal situation.
Okay, interesting perspective there. So to kind of put a bow on the Santander conversations, this to me, my read on you is that you only view it as legitimate if they are to move on from Nick Castellanos. I'll put it out there that I am not in favor of that, but do you think that is accurate, that that's kind of the outlook for him?
Yeah, I don't really think he's going to get moved.
Me neither.
I don't think he's going anywhere. I just don't think signing Santander to play a new position when he's already not
30.
necessarily that great at one makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
I think the bat is legit, but I don't know how much the move itself really makes sense right now.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So, final thoughts. What is your level of likelihood from 1 to 10, and what is your level of desire? I'll give mine first, real quick. I think my desire, I actually like him as a player like quite a bit, so I think it would be cool to see him in this Phillies team. I think you got to do way too much moving for it to be worth it. That maybe the juice isn't quite worth the squeeze there. I'm kind of making this all work together. So I'll go as far as my level of desire. I'll go 5. My level of belief that this happens is probably like a 3. How about you, Luke?
Yeah, I'm honestly like right there with you. I think those would probably be the same thing. I think the bat would make sense.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily see the fit right now.
I like
If
the
they
switch hitting
were,
thing.
yeah, that is big. You don't get many switch hitters that can hit for power
Power,
anymore.
right?
If they were to trade Nick Castellanos, this would be a very enticing, very good move, I think. If they were to get rid of the Castellanos contract and they needed a right fielder, I think Santander is probably the perfect option. But I just don't think Castellanos is going to be moved.
Yeah, interesting. So we'll see how things play themselves out from here. But as always, let us know your guys' thoughts in the comments. Appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into this video. If you have not already, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video and your thoughts below. And maybe we'll be breaking down the Anthony Santander signing next, if that's what they have in store for us. But we'll be back as always, speaking through the offseason right here on Phillies Digest. Peace.